So master's in public health can look like a lot of things. I am doing a concentration in place-based health. So that's geared towards leaders in health fields or public administration, depending on what you're doing, that want to do community research and looking at a lot of factors like the psychosocial factors that impact health. You learn a little bit of epidemiology. You learn a lot about how to work in a team, decision making, how to do community-based participatory research. So it's very hands-on, and it allows you to really gain all the tools you need to do research and be able to bring in a team of specialists. So rather than specializing in, like, let's say epidemiology or like global health, it's a leadership concentration that allows you to lead a team of researchers ethically and be able to basically target out a program that you're looking to do based on a community need, and really focuses on understanding that community first, because if you don't have that foundation, then you can't understand like their history and maybe factors that are going to impact whether or not they trust you and how sustainable a change can be that you're implementing. So it's kind of like that holistic perspective on public health that allows you to do either policy or health communications or programming or program analysis. You can really take it any way you're wanting to, but it's really nice because I can tie that into another career. You can use it as your sole or main career. There's a lot of possibilities. And if you have any questions, like, I'd be happy to answer anything.
Ella, are you still planning to go to medical school? You are.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I am. Yes. Actually applying this cycle. So
you graduate from this program when?
In spring of 2023. Yep. Yep.
Well, let's go ahead and get started. I thought we would have some more to join us, but we are in the end of the school year. I mean, the graduation has already happened. Okay?
That's fair. That's fair.
Yeah, and a lot of our students have all of their lunch and learns already done. So, but I wanted to offer this. I knew that Lane was in our academy and had a healthcare interest, and there are a few others, and they may join us later. I don't know. So let's just go ahead and get started. You tell us about yourself and some of the things we discussed.
Yeah. So your name is Lane. I just want to make sure I'm getting that right. Okay, cool. So, well, I was going to do an icebreaker to, to open it up, but I guess I'll just ask Lane. I was going to ask if you could tell me a little bit about yourself and maybe something that doing your education during COVID in high school has taught you, and maybe like a career shift or something you've been thinking about differently.
So I have two main interests, and that's health science and then also musical theater.
Wow.
And yes, so that was something I was really looking into. And then COVID hit and we couldn't really do much at all with that. We'd have to wear masks and everything like that got shut down. I'm actually a freshman since my first year in high school. So I got a little bit of health science education at the middle school, and then this year we have a class that's very similar. So I don't think any of that has changed. I've always wanted to do something in healthcare, but I think my focus has been more set towards that after not being able to do as much on stage because of COVID.
Wow, that's amazing.
That's fair.
That's awesome. Well, thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I mean, that's huge. And you're a freshman and you've already got all that figured out. Wow, I'm impressed.
Her dad is sitting right here. He is the instructional coach. Around here, Matt, let her see you. So he's an English teacher. He was an English teacher. He's taught different levels all through the system. He's a much loved teacher here, and he's the instructional coach. So he works with teachers in their professional education.
That's wonderful. Wow. Awesome. Well, I guess I'll go ahead and share a little bit about myself. So my name is Ella Morin, and I'm currently in my Master's of Public Health with UNC Chapel Hill, the Gillane School of Global Public Health. And I also work full-time as a community health worker on the farm worker outreach team for a local nonprofit that works with migrant and seasonal farm workers. And I got into public health just with a lot of exposure from my childhood. I grew up part of the time in Knoxville, Tennessee, and then my family moved to Honduras. And so I was exposed to two very different cultures. And that led me to a lot of curiosity around how different people can have very different levels of access to education and finances and health. And so I've been looking a lot at the influences that just living in a different place can have in the community part. So that's why I'm doing community place-based health. And I think a lot of my interest in college, where I did a biology and Spanish double major at MTSU, really brought into question a lot of those deeper foundational influences of health. I did some cell biology research when I was in college, and it was very genetics heavy, and I really bugged my PI to death because I would always ask, but why? Why are these people experiencing these conditions? And why are their mitochondria not functioning right? Like, how did they get to that place? But in order to do cell biology, you have to be very reductionist. And unfortunately, like, that's how a lot of our education starts, and by necessity, right? Like, you can't overwhelm a kindergartner with the nuances of the fact that the world is not as black and white as we think it is, and 2 + 2 = 4, but sometimes it can be 5 and sometimes it can be 3. That would be very overwhelming. So we start with a reductionist approach, but the beauty of getting into higher education is that you get to learn about all the nuances. And more specifically with a liberal arts degree, that expansion of your perspective is really going to be the key. So I got into public health, and my concentration allows me to look at a lot of the historical oppressions that communities, and specifically BIPOC communities in Asheville, have experienced. We have the Eastern Band of Cherokee Nations here as well, and they have their own fully run hospital. So there's a lot of different pieces at play in diversity here that I've been able to experience. And so I think one of the big things for me is learning to do research and being able to decenter myself from decision making, allowing a community to bring up a need, and then being able to work and engage ethically to solve that and create solutions. And some of the current projects I've been working on, I'm co-authoring a study on produce prescription. So our clinic at Vecinos, we have patients who are hypertensive and diabetic and are resistant to treatment, not out of a kind of willful way, but just the way that their body is responding to medication and the access to healthy food and health-seeking behaviors that they have based on work and finances and things like that. So each week we did a pilot study where participants would get $100 worth of locally sourced produce. So that could be sprouts, sourdough bread, berries, all sorts of things. These boxes were extremely colorful. They're not the typical food donations you think of, like canned beans and rice. They were getting quality ingredients from their community. And then we would have a cooking class. So they get to learn new recipes, and then they would take the boxes home. We had gas cards to provide some compensation for transportation. And we ran this program for 3 months. And we had a lot of issues with follow-up A1Cs, but we did see some numbers go down from the participants who came back for the end of the study. So that was really encouraging to see. And we're working on submitting that to APHA, so very excited. And then the other project I'm working on in development stage right now is surveying farm workers across Western North Carolina and looking at health equity. So access to healthcare and services, how much information they have, and any barriers that they're experiencing. So yeah, my current work, I'm also full-time as a farm worker outreach team worker. And with that, I've been able to do health assessments for farm workers and looking at, unfortunately, a lot of the rough living situations that are provided, but being able to advocate for rights. There's an H-2A visa program that they get to apply through. And so farms will apply to have additional workers at a set minimum wage. And we will go in with mobile clinics to make sure they have access to dental and family medicine care, and then even send them back with additional months of prescription medication if they're going back to a country in Central America where they may not have access to those same medications. And so my days kind of look a little bit different each time. I could be in the ER translating, or at a farm, or a mobile clinic, but I really love what I do, and it keeps me on my toes for sure. And then long term, I am applying to medical school, so continuing the community health research, and my goal is to serve as a family medicine doctor in rural medicine. I have a big heart for the Appalachian Mountains and rural communities, and really understanding that, you know, there's that saying that, you know, we all have the same 24 hours in the day, but if we think about that in reality, that's not exactly true, especially if you're a working single mom, or you don't have enough money to meet your grocery bills, or you know, your electricity. So really trying to understand how we can make change at a systems level, to impact health outcomes for community members in ways that are sustainable and practical. And then also just looking at things that we can do to improve health education so that people can make their own lifestyle changes as well. But I think if I could boil anything down, it would be that, you know, you guys are in this Humanities Academy, and I think that's incredible. You're already looking at an expanded perspective on what you're studying. And I just encourage you to continue doing that, because it really boils down to that expansion of your perspective and your worldview, and the ability to connect with other people and hold space for ideas and perspectives, religions, cultures that maybe you don't agree with and maybe seem foreign to you, but you're able to respect that and appreciate those differences. And that's going to further your career, whether that's as a working professional in business or healthcare or humanities, if you're working on a campus, wherever you are, if you can bring a bigger perspective and empathy to the situation and be able to critically think about how your words or your own framework might impact someone else, that's really going to help you engage in more authentic ways and be more ethical with your decision making and interactions. And so I would just encourage you to think about your creativity as a map. And when you can zoom out of the timeline and see the bigger picture, you're really going to be able to have an expanded opportunity for creativity and communication. And, you know, it is our responsibility to show up as well-rounded professionals, and we cannot just focus on, you know, in my case, biology. I can't just sit there and stare at a cell and go, okay, this is it. All right, I just gotta, you know, fix this cell. It's like, okay, I gotta zoom out and see the body and see the lived experiences of that person and the generational trauma that they bring to the room and the oppression that they've had, and maybe the systemic racism that they've endured in a hospital setting, and maybe they don't trust a provider. And so thinking about all of those things, thinking about how I can hold a safe space for them to open up and be vulnerable, and how I can not belittle them, you know, for differences or for misunderstandings, but really walk beside them and help them make choices that will further their health and allow them to thrive. Those are the big things in life that really matter. And so whatever career you're going into, it's really important to have that expanded mindset and be able to engage with communities in that way. So if you guys have any questions, I would love for some feedback, but I just wanted to share a little bit and see how I can help you guys.
Of course, I have a question, but I won't.
So how did you decide that this was something that you wanted to do?
Yeah. What part?
She's doing so much.
What made you decide that you wanted to go to medical school after being in school for so long with all these other things?
Yeah, I think it started from a very young age of just curiosity. My grandmother was a nurse and she would teach me how to read blood pressures. And then when I moved to Honduras, I was able to work with community doctors and do home visits and check-ins. And that really sparked my expansion of, oh, this can be bigger than just a doctor's office. You know, health is looking at a community and checking in real time. And so I think coming from that kind of like integrative view of looking at medicine as not just clinic time, but also the community at large, that really made me want to combine public health and medicine. And just the idea that, you know, healthcare is a human right. You know, people don't have to earn their way to live, and they shouldn't have to earn the ability to thrive. And if someone doesn't have access to that, it's my goal to improve that quality of access. So I think that's what keeps me in school. And I would just also say that, you know, even if you're in school, like life goes on. I still travel, I still have fun. You know, you're not just going to be staring at a book forever. Like you get a lot of hands-on experiences. And I think combining work and school makes it even more meaningful because I'm working in my field while I'm studying. And so those cross connections happen a lot. But also just like liberal arts in general, when you have that abstraction of like what you're doing and why it matters versus like, okay, I have to study for this test and I have to get over this, and then I take the next class, but then I have another semester and another year, it gets very overwhelming. But if you just take it a day at a time and kind of step back from that timeline and see the bigger picture, you know, same thing if you're in a rut, like emotionally, and you can't get out of a framework of thinking and you're just in this cycle, you have to zoom out from that, maybe have a friend as an outside navigator, but like getting some perspective and having mentors that inspire you is definitely something that keeps me on my toes and keeps me really fired up about what I do. So I hope that helps.
You worked some at a clinic here in Murfreesboro while you were in college, right?
I did, yeah. So I've been interpreting for a long time. I started doing it when I was in Honduras, and then I volunteered with some clinics in Murfreesboro, and it definitely helps you get an outside perspective on just different ways that communities have access to health. And funny enough, even though I thought I was going to be just working as as a farm worker outreach member of my team, I do a lot of interpreting in my day-to-day. So it definitely comes in handy. Yeah.
I have a question that came from actually another student who's not here, but he's pre-med as well. And this applies to Lane too. How would you suggest if a student is not in a situation to get 2 majors in college, like you did, okay?
Mm-hmm.
How would you suggest they go about expanding themselves in that those things that the liberal arts bring? You know, would you suggest a certain kind of minor, like we have a musical theater minor for one thing. What would you suggest if they have limited time to do that, maybe a course or 2 or an activity or 2, what would you suggest if they can't do a whole major?
Yeah.
Is one of our graduates, and this is something you need to know, one of our graduates said once he finished, and he did the same thing you did, a double major, once he finished college, he didn't get any training in medical school about how to deal any human skill kind of training, any soft skill, none. So you need to get it while you're in college. That's what those were his words. Yeah. So what would your suggestion be?
Yeah, I think some of the best classes I had in my liberal arts degree were probably like sociology and some advanced literature classes. Honestly, any type of literature that gets you exposed to different cultures, different worldviews, traveling. If you can do like a semester abroad or even just a couple weeks out of your summer abroad and really engage with one community for a fixed period of time. Things that challenge your perspective. I think we get so stuck in a narrow perspective, and you know, growing up in the Bible Belt in the South is very much reinforced that, you know, if you stray, you're gonna somehow be off the wrong or off the right path, but there's no reason why you can't hold empathy and hold space for other perspectives. And the more you do that, the better you become at engaging with them and just appreciating the world around you. Because, you know, I have my perspective and I have what I hold to be true, but that's not the same for everyone. And when we can get out of this like very like American, like, you know, I feel like we kind of have a little bit of Christian nationalism going on here. Like America is God's country. And it's kind of prevalent in a lot of things very subtly. But we can kind of zoom out of that and be like, you know, like I'm just as special as someone else, and all of the experiences, all of the lived experiences that we come across are valid, and they should be treasured as such. So when we can decenter ourselves and get out of that kind of like white savior complex and step aside and realize that we have a lot to learn from everyone around us, education becomes a part of life and not just a classroom setting.
That's a very good quote. Think about that. A part of life, not just a classroom setting. That's so important because, and I went through college with a pre-med husband, so I know you can get so nose to the grindstone because there's so many requirements, and it is hard. So it's very hard to do what you're saying, to sit back and say, what's the bigger picture here? I'm going to live my life while I'm doing this, and I'm going to be a person, and I want to feel things for other people. And
right.
It's very hard to do, but you did it well. I will say that.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
You did well. How much longer did it take you to get your 2 degrees? Did it take you another year?
No, I did it in 4 years.
4 years.
I was a little crazy. I did like 18 to 20 hours a semester in some summer classes, but you know.
You did it in 4 years?
I did, yeah.
No, that's crazy. Don't try that.
It was a little much, but you know, I think the more you do things, like instead of like just being a student, like having a part-time job or volunteering, like I volunteered with a community garden. That was like one of the most meaningful parts of my college experience, which is like learning about food deserts and how even a community garden can improve access to healthy food and connections. So,
I didn't know that. Tell me that.
Oh yeah.
Well, and you also came into college with probably 12 credits towards Spanish. My guess is because you were already a native speaker, right? So
Yeah.
You got a lot of credit for your, you know, previous experience with Spanish. That helped a little bit.
That did help. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Ella. That our time, this is perfect. Our time is up. So do you have any questions? So we have recorded this, Ella. So we'll have this to share with other students and so this will be nice because there were several health science students that are not here today that I want to see this.
Great.
So,
Oh, that's wonderful.
Thank you very much for giving us time. And
for sure.
I didn't throw you too late today getting things done that you have to get done.
Oh, no worries. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you guys. And Lane, it was really nice to meet you. Wish you the best of luck. If you ever want to reach out, I'd be happy to talk.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You guys.
Bye.
Bye.